All right. So Degard and I have been discussing our different conceptions of spirituality. And as we both agreed that rather than have a divisive approach to different ideas of spirituality, we thought we both wanted, so we both have the intention of unifying rather than dividing people in different like spiritual buckets. So the objective of this conversation is really to see where our common areas are and build upon that with the intention of including as many people and as many belief systems as possible, because we both agreed that the defining principle of spirituality is to unify. So no, it's not. She disagrees, but
inclusivity as
inclusivity, yes,
as opposed to unification. Yeah,
yes, inclusivity.
To not be kind of antagonistic towards one another's viewpoint, but just as a kind of to understand. That's where I'm, yeah, I think, and we're both coming from, to understand each other.
Understand each other, exactly. And keep an open mind in order to discuss each other's point of view, and sometimes agree to disagree, but but still have a constructive approach where the points where we agree should be, quote unquote, more important of the points that we disagree on. So in one of the emails that we exchanged, I think I'm going to use it as my atheist statement. Instead of artist statement, it's going to be atheist statement. So this is what I wrote to Degard. I wrote, I believe spirituality is an inclusive approach, and I personally do not care if people hold different beliefs, religious or spiritual or atheist. I'm quite happy to accept that some of us believe in spirits because they had a direct experience of them. For example, Marina Abramovic. I have not, so I cannot speak for spirits, but all humans have a brain, and therefore it is our minimum common denominator. My approach to spirituality is pragmatic and down to earth. In a materialist world, divided and skeptical, speaking of two opposing principles ruling the mind is a pretty universal construct worldwide. Whether we call it left or right hemispheres, consciousness or matter, spirit or body, good or evil, Caino or Abele in Italian, female or male, within ourselves we have two poles that exist in tension. Spirituality is about transcending our natural duality into an integrated unity of all those opposing principles. So this is kind of my position, starting position, which I want to stress that is not set in stone. I'm on a journey, and you may talk to me in a year time and I may have changed my opinion about some of the things I have said in the past, because I strongly believe that our beliefs are determined by our personal experiences. So if I happen to have a paranormal experience, then obviously my position will change, because to me, that would be empirical proof of something, even if subjective. So I'm perfectly conscious and aware that my personal experiences are subjective and therefore phenomenological. However, I cannot ignore them as far as my beliefs are concerned, as far as my thinking is concerned. So what is important, I think, is to keep an open mind and not dismiss what one may call an anomalous or a psi event out of prejudice, or, you know, because one is a materialist, then everything else cannot be considered. So that's kind of my, call it cognitive state of mind, which is an open-minded one. So Degard, how do you want to
Oh, I was hoping you would now show your
oh,
full,
okay.
yes, and then I will, if you don't mind, I 100% agree. My response to you in brief is that when you wrote to me and we were starting this conversation, I was immediately like up, because this is the normal, I think, process where people, you know, there's a jousting. But my intention was inclusivity, and then yours was as well, and then we could cooperate, and it was really lovely. And what I heard was, initially you said left, right brain. Well, immediately this was like flag, because apparently in neuroscience, even though I know absolutely screw all about it, the left and the right don't exist. But what you explained to me, which I found, you know, brilliant actually, was that this is a metaphor, this is a representation for something that we don't really understand, and so therefore it's a symbolizing, if you like, a metaphorical association that you're bringing forth, which is really interesting. And yeah, and that's all. And I'm really fascinated, and I was just really fascinated by your version of spirituality, because I have come across a number of people who I deeply respect, who hold some parts of how I perceive the spirit world, as in invisible phenomena, and a god, a godhead, something, and your version, which doesn't have the invisible people in it, or spirits, or entities, or perhaps not even an invisible as such dimension. And I just found that really fascinating, and that's where it's all come from. So yeah, I'm going to hand it all back to you to
Okay, so yesterday, literally yesterday, in preparation for this talk, I tried to gather my thoughts that were dispersed in several emails and several pieces of papers. And when I usually, to help myself to organize all these thoughts, I use mind mapping. I use an app that it's essentially mind mapping. So it's not perfect in any way, or it's probably full of problems, but I'm going to share screen. Okay. So this is what I started working on yesterday. And today I just want to contextualize where I'm coming from, essentially. And I'm looking at the world, as I told Degard yesterday, as a social scientist. And what we're facing at the moment are three very, very big issues. One is the retreat of Christianity from the West, that is creating a spiritual void. Two is an epidemic of diseases of despair, which is what Dr. Lisa Miller is describing, the rising of anxiety, drug use, depression, suicides, and so on and so forth. That is particularly in the United States, but in general, neuroscientists and psychologists and doctors are observing this trend. Then we have a climate and environmental crisis. And then last one is my own personal context, which is of somebody who does not believe anymore. And once I stopped being part of an organized religion, I really didn't have any outlet or any other place to go to continue cultivating my spirituality. In fact, the spirituality, it simply disappeared from my life. So in terms of the retreat of Christianity, I just want to show you a couple of numbers. For example, the England and Wales census that was done in 2021. And Christianity went from 71% in 2001 to 46%. And the vast majority of these people ended up in the bucket so-called nuns. So nuns are people who are who simply do not belong to an organized religion. The problem with the UK census is, well, there are several problems, but one of the problems is that it doesn't include the category spiritual but not religious. So the UK census doesn't measure for the spiritual but not religious people. So to understand what's going on in this bucket, which is now 37% of UK population, we have to kind of look at the US, where the Pew Research Center runs sort of regular surveys about the nuns. Sounds like the nuns, but it's the ones that are not affiliated, the non-affiliated. And interestingly, within the non-affiliated, 72% still believe in God or a higher power, because Degard asked me, do you think that the secular atheist position is very common? And the data says it's not. Because even among the spiritual but not religious, the vast majority still believes in a God or a higher power. What they do not believe in are organized religions. But maybe we should be more specific, because I think it's a Christianity crisis. And here I forgot what forgot what this was. Oh, the nuns in the US went from 19% in 2012 to 27% in 2017. So again, there is quite a strong trend upward. While people who declare themselves Christians went from 81% in 2001 to 65% in 2020. So again, those the 20% difference went straight into the nuns, so to speak. Now,
Annalisa, can we try and compress the whole of your thinking?
Yes.
We believe you in all the data, and perhaps we can look into that at another point.
Data. No, I finished. That was it. Okay. So that's kind of the context, and so in terms of pillars, if I had to conceptualize an atheist spirituality, I would look at the ontology, the metaphysics, the epistemology, and then morality, i.e., how do you behave? What are the values? And I think in the end, that's the most important pillar of them all, because what matters are our actions, our deeds, rather than our beliefs. So in terms of ontology, I said it before, I think that spirituality is essentially a mindset, but it's a mindset that determines a particular way of being in the world. And it can also be a technology. So spiritual practices become a technology to access different ways of knowing. It absolutely encompasses meaning and purpose. So a growth towards self-actualization. And beyond self-actualization, it can be transformative and eventually and some people maybe will experience transcendence. But in my worldview, all these things can be achieved without a Godhead, because there are particular techniques that one can do to bring you to that level of transcendence. Now, the interesting thing for me is that when people do have those oceanic experiences, are the ones that believe that there is a Godhead. So it is the experience that informs the beliefs rather than the other way around. So in terms of mindset, I'm using essentially McGilchrist's framework of the right and left hemisphere. And I'm extrapolating from his books here. I have identified, based on what he describes as the powers and functions of the right hemisphere, the spiritual hemisphere. And this is because it's the non-utilitaristic hemisphere. It's about being rather than doing, and it's about observing without judgment. Then in terms of particular way of being, I've added wisdom in a spiritual way of being. So a spiritual person should develop wisdom, and these are just some characteristics of what wisdom feels like to me. So reason, authenticity, searching for the truth, being moderate, so avoiding excesses, justice, but I mean, you can go on and on. And in terms of moral imperative, my ruling, I would adopt as a ruling principle a sense of connection to something greater than oneself. And what is greater than oneself? If it's, if it's not God, then it could be a larger reality on Earth, not in the sky. And the larger reality can be humankind, nature, Earth, and the universe. But I'm quite pragmatic in my approach to spirituality. So I don't believe that, individually or as a race, we can affect the universe, but we can certainly affect Earth. So personally, I would just stop at Earth. But of course, as we send things into the universe, eventually we're going to have to think about, like pollution and rubbish that is left rotating around the Earth. So, eventually that is going to become a concern. So our influence is going to keep growing and growing and growing outside of the Earth limits. In terms of technology, obviously, religions have developed spiritual practices that takes you to a transcendent state or a spiritual mind or mindset. So, for instance, meditation, prayers, contemplation, reading sacred text. But I would add learning, to be honest. Whenever we sit down to learn and studying, it's, to me, is a spiritual practice, because you're enriching your mind, and it's also reflexive. So you have to reach that sense of calm and then, of course, as a technology, it also helps with introspection, so learning about yourself. So it's also, so spiritual practices can also be used to get in touch with our true self. It's just another technology. As you could go to the psychoanalyst, or you can do spiritual practices such as meditation, for example, or mindfulness, to learn about, to learn about yourself. So again, spirituality as a mindset, and as a practice can help in that respect. And then again, spirituality obviously is about meaning and purpose, is about finding your meaning and your purpose, which is really the realm of positive psychology. We read about this everywhere, believe in yourself and don't limit yourself, don't let your beliefs limit yourself, and so on and so forth. And it is absolutely true, I think, that if people are lost and they don't know their purpose, that what causes mental health issues and eventually social problems and so on and so forth. So it can be used also for people to find their true purpose, to find their true calling. And then last but not least, it could be used as a transformative experience, which is the realm of transpersonal psychology. And why not seeking for the sacred? We all have different ideas of what the sacred is, but it's certainly I think something that humans need, to have this, to feel a sense of the sacred, and to discriminate between the mundane and the sacred. Now, this is probably the aspect where Degard feels most passionate about, and I feel least passionate about, because in my perspective, metaphysical concerns or beliefs or discussions are kind of intellectual, in the sense that they don't really help people in the day-to-day, or on this, in living their lives consciously. So I haven't spent a lot of time in thinking of the metaphysical aspects of spirituality. So I've only wrote down a few things that I'm open to. For example, talking about energies, different kinds of energies, whether they're psychic or consciousness or, I don't know, quantum physics. So I'm quite open to the idea that energy is all around us. We are energy, we are energetic beings. And therefore, it is possible that we are in contact or we communicate with other energies. The fact that we cannot measure them, it's an epistemological problem. It doesn't mean that they don't exist. Another theory that I find interesting is this idea of co-primacy of consciousness and matter, so that the universe is formed of both consciousness and matter, without giving priority to one or the other. And what I find not acceptable, but I can follow, is this idea that the more complex a system, the more conscious it becomes. So there is this direct proportionality between complexity and level of consciousness. This is because this is what we have observed on Earth. And I see it in an evolving sense. So as the universe evolves, so if there is a consciousness, so it is its consciousness. And humans may or may not be the frontier of consciousness of the universe, but we can't tell, because we don't know if there are other aliens or you know, other planets in the universe that might have might have a civilization that is even more advanced than ours, or maybe it existed but it doesn't exist anymore. So there are simply too many unknowns for me to give it much thought, because there are just too many questions. And equally, I really like the idea of panpsychism, also because I think it's not only protective of our mental health to believe in something greater than humans, but also because it may be particularly useful today in regards to the climate crisis that we are all talking about. So there's
you've been going for about 17 minutes
okay.
now. I'm going to give you another. Do you think you can wrap it up in another 2-3 minutes?
Okay, so good. So okay, so I think where spirituality is most helpful, yeah, I say helpful, but I it's in the in epistemology, because it's about different modalities through which we discover the world and reality. I think this is really where a spiritual mindset can make a difference. And so this is where I talk a lot about the right hemisphere, which is taken directly from Ian McGilchrist, so from his research on the right hemisphere. And and obviously, as a mode of knowing, there's the visionary with all its, and I only listed some because I couldn't, you know, such a short time, I couldn't think of all of them. But the visionary, it's a mode of knowing, and it can take all these different modes, from trance to psychedelics to mystical states, ecstasy, clairvoyance, mediumship. And together with the visionary, there's the creative, which is art, imagination, and music intelligence and artistic intelligence. There's intuition, gut feelings, telepathy, long distance vision, premonitions. There's a feeling, so empathy, theory of mind, compassion, and finally instincts that have a lot to do with natural intelligence. So all these modes of apprehending reality are traced by McGilchrist to the right hemisphere. And this is, I think, where what Degard, you know, defined as a metaphor really kicks in, because it is the spirit, a spiritual mindset is really a right hemisphere mindset, and relies heavily on right hemisphere cognitive abilities that are very different from left hemisphere cognitive abilities. A thing that is really, that he really stresses is the fact that the right hemisphere is really concerned with the environment, and what it perceives is change, patterns, networks, that interconnections, and which are really symptoms of flow and therefore energy. So the right hemisphere is more in tune with change, because change is energy that flows through things, and movements, rather than static states, which are really the realm of the left hemisphere. So, and then here I extrapolate, the right hemisphere sees energy, while the left hemisphere sees matter. So that's where the spirit versus matter is corresponded to the hemispheres. And then the last part, it's really about morality. So how does a spiritual mindset, what are the values of a spiritual person? And so I thought about the most important ones. One we talked about is inclusivity, which means respect for other cultures and tolerance. Then irreducible values such as beauty, goodness, and truth. This idea, again, right hemisphere thinking, which is systemic rather than parts. So holistic.
Another few seconds.
Yeah, well, this is basically the end. So there are also, being content, grateful, being purposeful, living consciously, and then having the awareness that we are nature, we're not separate from nature. So this idea that we're connected and interconnected drives all the values and the behaviors from there on. So if you start from an awareness of connection and interconnection, and then embrace inclusivity, then all the other behaviors more or less follow from that. Now, everything I said do not require any system of beliefs. So this is kind of I call it minimum common denominator, because what I envisage doesn't require any particular dogma or any particular system of beliefs. So I have essentially taken what is already there, developed by religions and later by humanistic philosophies, and simply by, and for me, this is enough really to have to achieve a better society and a better world, a more just world, and a more fair world, and come si dice, equitable. So and it doesn't require, any credo or any mi viene la parola. You don't have to declare your faith to anything. So this is in a nutshell, which is not a nutshell, what I have been working on, or not working on, but trying to develop or formulate. And the two main contexts for spirituality, for atheist spirituality, are art and nature. So those are the two main contexts.
Brilliant, amazing. Well, wow, what when we were talking a few days ago, I mean yesterday and previously, this was just in its infancy, and now you have rapidly massively expanded it, so it's really comprehensive. That is amazing. So congratulations on getting it to be really filled out. Yeah, and I look forward to everyone's viewpoint on this. Sorry to have to hurry you. I'm just aware of the fact that I don't know how long we've got for this whole event, but to try and get
45 minutes.
45, yeah. So we need to speed it up. Okay, so I'm going to go straight into my little spiel, and I'm going to share screen. You are screen sharing, so now everybody can see my desktop. Oh no, where's my thing? Hang on. I'm just going to stop sharing. How annoying. Why is it gone when you just need it? Ah. Good. Perfect. So not to be outdone, I created an online flowchart as well, but this is merely to explain the image that I created to the right. Very differently, my premise starts from a completely different position. And so the premise is to focus on simple ideas that can be instantly known by us all. And this is something that Dr. Alan Rayner taught me, because he was so frustrated by, let's call it ordinary science, that tries to sort of, you know, befuddle you, and you've got to have, you know, a minimum of a BSc in order to understand it. My belief and a sincere belief that I think that we hopefully could agree on, if you like, are that there are energies. We're made of an energy. We feel energetic. We feel our life energies. We see it around us. And those energies feel rather kind of massive, I think, as we go around our day-to-day lives. Those energies, and I'm using the plural because I just think Einstein is wrong. Obviously, I have no ability to prove this from a scientific point of view, but I believe that we have personal energies in the same way that all of us know that we have pretty much personal ecospheres of weather around our own houses and homes. You know, we have our own pressure in our body, our own blood pressure and our own pressures that we experience as we go around the place. We experience different pressure, you know, as I go from, you know, my home onto a train, into a car. You feel them inside moving around you. You know, the body itself, this incredible energetic presence, which is tremendous in my view, and incredible. And I believe, and I find it absolutely extraordinary that that our body is so made up of, somebody will put me right, but like 17 trillion cells or something that reproduce themselves almost daily, like to such a mammoth degree that we're almost being reproduced continuously. That the interaction of all these elements and atoms, and this is our scientific understanding so far, that massive interaction just within ourselves, let alone the entire world, cosmos, whatever around us, is this massiveness shows a huge interactive intelligence. That interactive intelligence we understand in an utterly simplistic, copable model that is our 3D environment. And that in itself, that reduction by our presence and our creation, it's just, I find that mind-blowing. I find that extraordinary. I know that if I was actually consciously in charge of my body, I would screw up, you know, because I'm just about capable of tidying my house and making the dinner and that kind of thing. so put me in charge of, you know, the regeneration of anything like something in trillions. I mean, forget about it. So I think we can see that huge organizational consciousness as an intelligence in itself. But and that's the intelligence that I'm the minimum to it. For those of us that believe in the invisible, we have an understanding of intelligences that go far beyond. I call, or whatever, I call that I'm calling that here big consciousness. Please give me some better language. I feel that big consciousness, it flows, like I'm saying, it flows into humanity, things, animals, life, and elements, and you know, energies exist here, whether we believe them or not. It doesn't matter. And I use the word ether just because I like it, not because I think it's a good. It's actually obviously very old-fashioned as an idea, but I just like it as a word. I think it kind of encapsulates an energetic energies which were pre-Einsteinian, but basically I'm talking about these energies that are alive, aware, conscious, whether we actually can perceive it or not. I'm coming to think that the natural nature of this big consciousness is to include. Yeah. And I'm also and perhaps this explains, you know, explains us, that this inclusiveness seems to explain us and seems to include life. On the other side, this is something that I'm not sure about. I can't explain antagonism, and I can't explain the conflict. I've never had the experience in the visionary of the negative. People fear from inside of themselves. So where does that come from? Don't know. But when I stopped fearing the visionary, I could experience it and know it and see it without fear. And therefore, all of this sort of shadow and negative energy is not something that I can attest to at all. But I've just kind of put it in there because conversations I was having before earlier today, that perhaps energies hold their very being in a kind of natural conflict, which obviously we know within humankind is very conflicted. And the only evidence, in a way, that I can discover with my own eyesight and my own understanding is that that life seems to love living and reverberates, literally. I mean, we aggressively stop wanting to die. And that of the scurrying spider, you go to catch a spider, it knows you're going to do something to it that restricts its freedom and possibly its life, and therefore it runs, and so do we in the same way. And I feel that perhaps from this consciousness point of view, from this big consciousness, there's a preference to peace and a love of birth, and we experience that within humankind. So this is the only kind of evidence, and I'm sure people can come forward and perhaps evidence the nature of conflict, but I've not discovered it within the visionary at all. And I think, you know, quantum is quite helpful in a way, these new notions of quantum, where things are sort of, you know, if you take this and say, well, yes, I believe in energy being conscious, then the quantum layering of that consciousness, which we experience some of it absolutely day to day. We have our current awareness. We are aware of dementia, where the mind, you know, goes into another kind of awareness, which is, I find, absolutely fascinating. We experience sleep, and dream states and the unconscious. And we know that our body has a different kind of consciousness, which rather nastily suddenly appears as growths and things that we don't want, and crystals forming in the body that we're not happy with. In order to kind of represent this big consciousness, I have created an invoice. I've created an image of it, if you like, and the background is this wider, bigger consciousness. The circles are atoms, elements moving within it, but it's all filled with a color, and the color has a meaning. I'm my aura is on the left-hand side, and I was really pleased with my aura colors, actually, that there was largely a lot of yellow around me, which I take to be about sort of spirit and intelligence, but also about anxiety. I wasn't happy with that. I'm not happy with that bit of myself, but that is who I am. So but I was happy about the kind of spiritual, intelligent side. And my system allows for these presences, these energies to remain, that they remain as intelligences and as traces within the system. It's because they are energies that are retained. The reason that I paint in color is because the colors are intended to be they hold that awareness. And I've got my own color chart on the left. As I said, the aura colors of yellow are anxiety and spirituality. Red is pain and passion. Blue is health and healing, etc. You read it for yourself. And then on the right hand side are all the kind of atoms, if you're particularly interested in that. And of course, within the things we have the atom, but the atom, to me, if we can see it, and this is purely just representation, is actually full. And therefore our universe is filled with this energetic presence, this vibrancy, this vitality, this inclusiveness. And this is where I create, again, artistically, the kind of the sweeping lines of flow and inclusion and involvement, and together, that we are together. And you can see that I've included Eros in Piccadilly Circus there in the middle, which is about the aura of place. So that place has an energy, as we very well know, that each place holds very different energies and personal energies for us, and that our place is here on this planet, and we experience this. But overall, what's extraordinary is that we experience that, but actually our body is in a different, an entirely different ecosphere. Our minds are in another dimension, and we know that because we can transfer from here to the to Hildegard of Bingen, like that. So we've just transcended time. And Hildegard, by the way, is in the middle, and I put her in for June because that's where I first met June, singing Hildegard. And so we live in this multi-something, multi-quantum. This is a very different worldview to Annalisa, in a sense. And I thought it was really interesting where you think of metaphysical as being intellectual. For me, it's not metaphysical at all. It's experiential, and it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, because the background, if you like, the pinks and the reds and the oranges and the yellows in the background are intended to represent this greater power. Now, I can call this greater power God. I can call it whatever I like. We can call it whatever we like. We can call it higher power. But it is powerful. There's no doubt. It is within us. We are part of it. It is part of us. We are flowing in it, whether we choose to agree to that or not. So that is the end of my spiel. Yeah, I will stop sharing.
So do we open up to the participants, or do I respond to what you said? I'm not sure.
Do respond for a moment, and then
okay. Well, first of all, I love the painting. I really like it. I love the colors, and I totally get the color coding, because this is something that I'm doing as well in my course about holistic creative arts, as a form of therapy. So we certainly associate feelings to colors, and colors certainly hold energy. It may be subjective, but I'm not entirely convinced is 100% subjective. My reaction to what you described is that it doesn't in any way interfere or contradict what I've said, because your approach is cosmological, so to speak. Well, mine is pragmatic. Mine is, what do we do with spirituality? Why is it important? Why should we be more spiritual? And how do we get more spiritual? What is the point of all this? So my approach is very down to earth, while your approach is a bit up in the sky. Like, there are all these energies flowing around, but my question, I suppose, is, okay, so what do we do with that? We
are it anyway, so we can just be, we are it, and it's just,
but it doesn't tell me, it doesn't give me any direction.
You need the direction. You're asking for
on
the direction,
how to live my life.
But what I would say is that your direction, where you said earlier, you said that your system was not about beliefs. I would say that your system is premised on and we talked about this yesterday, on an initial choice to, if you like, become spiritual. And I would say all that's about is just about kind of observing what we already are, and what it already is, because it's, and it's lovely to kind of organize it. And that's perhaps what religion has tried to do, is there have been some visionary experiences which have then been organized, and people are blown away by them for centuries.
I'd be really interested to hear other people's.
Yes, please.
I honestly don't know what else to add.
Thank you very much.
I'm at loss, to be honest. I don't know how to progress. So does anyone want to have a statement or a question? Or
I'm happy to give you some feedback, and thank you so much, both of you, for all the work that you've done in organising the thoughts. Very quickly, unfortunately, Annalisa, you said something that I really wasn't sure about. I think you said the brain was the minimum common denominator. Did you?
Yes, I did. All humans have a brain.
Yes, so that's the minimum common denominator. But it's a question of how that brain is being used, and I think you said that all the belief systems would actually have to come from that, but you're still describing them as belief systems, and there is that presumes a duality.
Sorry, I'm not following you.
No, well, I'm not in the least surprised about that, but thank you
I
for
think-
trying.
I think what
No, no,
I-
no, push forward. Yeah, explain yourself, Judith. Yeah.
Well, we are the process. We are the product of our thoughts, essentially. So there's unless you realise that we're kind of not manufactured. Oh God, it's so hard to put into words unless you're a Rinpoche and you've actually seen it and firmly grasped hold of it. There's a duality there, and it's all essentially to get to the root of spirituality and to actually say something's really spiritual. I think you've got to get past that duality.
Yes, which I think what I said in my statement, transcendent duality.
Did you? Hang
Yeah,
on.
so
That was a lot
I was-
further on. I did try and take notes, Annalisa.
no, it's all right. So what I was referring to,
Duality.
the left and right hemisphere live in tension, and they actually want different things, and they have different personalities, and they have different priorities. Now, this hemispheric tension is then translated in our mythology or our folklore or our customs into this dual, in a duality of good and evil, male and female. What did I mention? Spirit and body, consciousness and matter. So,
If I could, may I just, because that actually feeds into perfectly into what Degard was saying about antagonism.
There is antagonism, but I prefer tension, because you need the tension. You need it. It's not something that, it's not about winning one against the other. So it's about finding the balance, but you need a certain amount of antagonism to create.
Yes, absolutely. To come into creation. Yeah, but my idea of spirituality is one beyond that.
Okay.
Oh.
Because Degard, I think that we create our own fears, and
But create from what? From where?
pardon?
Create from what? I mean, are
Well,
we?
from how we think produces it. Hang on, I can't find where.
Sorry,
Huh?
sorry if I. They also come from experience. They're not just about thoughts. If you have a traumatic experience, that's going to leave you with fear.
But again,
Yes, but that traumatic experience becomes part of yourself.
but again, I think.
So therefore, you recreate it if you're talking in terms of post-traumatic stress disorder or something like that, Annalisa.
But to me, trauma is very much seems related to the preservation of living and of retaining and holding and motivating these energies, this life force, you know.
Yeah, but generally preserving the self in the same way as the spider does, even though it doesn't know it has a self.
We don't know that.
Well, sorry, the first I used to get really freaked out by spiders because oh my God, they're alive.
We all do. We all do. We all do. But when Louise Bourgeois brought one into the gallery and made it, you know, turbine hall size.
Yeah,
we then became unsure as to the consciousness of the spider, the awareness.
Can we ask someone else to speak?
Absolutely. June, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm yes, I mean, the scholarship that you put into this, Annalisa, is terrific, and the way that you interpret color and your auras, Degard, are impressive. I think that's, I mean, if I take that last thing, we're all afraid of spiders. We've had several statements like that, which don't help inclusivity at all. We cannot assume anything that we all have. That's the most exclusive thing we can do, because I had a spider who lived in my window when I was particularly down, and the spider was my best friend. And I love spiders. And I think I've learned a lot from spiders. So when somebody says we all hate spiders, I rebel, because that excludes me, because everybody else does, but I don't. And I find that in the arguments, I find that tricky. One of the ones that I heard in yours, Annalisa, that the metaphysical does not help people every day. Well, I look at, for example, the Caribbean members of my congregation, with all that they've been through, and the knowledge of God, however you may conceive that, is what has kept them going. And I think that to sweep away that and to say that it is not helpful is to deny the experience of vast tranches of people. It may not influence you, but it does other people. The other thing I think, when we think about panpsychism, in a sense, the notion of consciousness, we actually have no knowledge of the consciousness of a spider or of an octopus or of a bird. We have made a lot of assumptions because of basically the way Western culture has gone and given human beings a priority over everybody else. You know, behind me today has been a whole load of stuff on COVID and evidence-based medicine. We have actually no evidence whatsoever that a bat does not have consciousness. To make that statement, we can't make it. And basically, I think those sorts of statements are not inclusive.
But June, can I just say, I don't know if it depends on your definition of consciousness. In my definition, the level of brilliance and intelligence and integration, organization, just equals consciousness.
Well, if you let's think about that spider, and you think about, and I watched the web be destroyed, and I watched the web be rebuilt, and I looked carefully at the web and the way it's done, and each time it was rebuilt, it was slightly different, and so on. How can we say that that is not a conscious creation? Only because biologists have told us that, and they have no evidence for that either. And when we talk about brain, you know, and ours apparently is situated in here, we are now finding that the brain of an octopus is actually scattered all over the body. Well, what does that actually mean in terms of consciousness? Is there not a consciousness of a being which has a brain scattered over a body, which is profoundly different from us, where it tends to be located in the head? So for me, panpsychism is that everything has a degree of consciousness of some kind or other, or there's the possibility that it does. And I don't think I agree with you that the more complex a being is, the more likely they are to have consciousness. I think those are the two things that I find tricky.
I just want to defend myself that in the hurry of coming to the end of my talk or speech, if you want, I actually, and let me share again the screen, because I did agree that panpsychism actually did have a beneficial effect on humans from a psychological perspective. So in that sense, I think that psychologists or the scholars of the mind should include in their working hypothesis these beliefs in God or spirits or ulterior power, ultimate powers, because we have evolved to all humans, all societies hold these beliefs in one way or another. So they're clearly part of our DNA, of our evolution. And to exclude them for scientific reasons, when you're dealing with people and minds, it's probably it's more hurtful than beneficial. So
it's more hurtful. I don't understand that, because again, it's a very sweeping statement to say all societies have done this, because if you look in detail of the shamanic societies, for example, which are in Africa, or you look at the indigenous traditions of, say, the Mi'kmaq, who I stayed with, they wouldn't agree with you at all.
They don't believe in spirits.
No, but they wouldn't agree that human beings have always had a notion that that somehow or other they're separate and different.
No, I agree with that. I agree with you.
I mean, I'm not contradicting you. I'm saying that your vision is too small. That it needs to include a greater variety, and it's terribly Western. It's Darwin written out, and the notion that we're progress. I have no belief that we're progressing. We might be circular, but the notion of evolution and progression, I think we have a relationship. So, and in a sense, and this will challenge you, what you presented to us is a belief system. It isn't a belief system of the dogmatic kind that has characterized the great faiths, but it is a belief system. And I admire you for that belief system. It's a great belief system. It's heavily based in Christianity, although it hasn't got the dogma. But the values are drawn from that particular tradition of Judaism and Christianity and so on. And in fact, self-actualization and inclusivity are very curious bedfellows, because they don't sit terribly well together. Because in self-actualization, you have the hero's journey, which you pursue really. And then at the other end, you have including everybody in it, which is not self-actualization. So I think it's a lovely vision, and I admire you for the immense, scholarship that you put in it. But I think there's more. There's a beyond in it. It's a vision colored by your own, which all of ours is, colored by the context of Western culture. But I admire both of you. But I think to say things like that all people, that's the sort of thing that I find very difficult.
But my statement about complexity was really a biological observation. The more complex the organism, the higher the level of consciousness.
So the biologists tell us, with no evidence.
But what I would say,
June, that there is no evidence.
What I would say, June, is that your position, in a way, so Annalisa and I tried to arrive at a kind of a very brief descriptor of her version and my version. And I would say that you and I are more aligned to a, I call it visionary. I know Leela doesn't like the word visionary, or not like it, but doesn't say hasn't got the right sort of intention. But you and I think, are more aligned in a sense of, we were just calling it a visionary spirituality, whereas Annalisa has what I was calling a secular spirituality, or we called an atheist spirituality. And where you were saying you feel that it, the whole concept is broader. For Annalisa, she hasn't, because of the phenomenon that have the way it just hasn't had that broad, what seems obvious in a way to perhaps you and I. It's just it's a different, but it's a spirituality based in a set of kindnesses and principles, which I know that you and I would fully concur with. So that's why we were having the conversation, because it's like there are these two spiritualities that are.
I think we ought to bring other people in. I was just making my comments.
Yes, thank you very much.
I know that Susanna's there, and I'm wondering if she's watching us and responding. So I'm just wondering whether you.
Leela, would you like to come in, Susanna?
Okay, I will say something. I'll just correct you, Degard, about the visionary, because wasn't exactly well, because I am using the term visionary quite a lot, but yes, I do, but it depends in what context. And we talked in the past about the term being used to to describe certain art forms which are not necessarily or art movements which are not necessarily the type that maybe I or you feel affiliated with, but the actual term is profound, and I affiliated with a profound and deeply noetic. For me, it's something which is metaphysical, but not metaphysical in a kind of airy-fairy way. I actually strongly interested and believe, I don't know if I believe, but I'm interested, I'm exploring these noetic realms which maybe are beyond time or beyond space, and I don't feel they are out there and disconnected to our daily life or physical being. I think that they are in parallel to our existence, and we can connect or find ways to access them through meditation and contemplation and art and various spiritual technologies and practices. But they are part of this cosmos, or I would say. But again, I don't necessarily come from a place of knowing. I view the existence as a mystery, and as an artist, I use the tools of art to try to explore spirituality or the different mysteries. And so this is my approach. But what I find very interesting about both of you, I mean, about your presentations and about how they came together, that although they are different in terms of your stance, I think that they are representing a certain, I would only hope, an emerging or developing kind of cultural shift, or just a shift in consciousness where humanity, I mean, again, it's not so much about evolution in Darwinian kind of way, not at all. It's about embracing complexity. It's about being able to flow rather than hold on to one dogma or another. It's about the ability to have more than one, to live in the unknown, to live in the mystery, and to have and to be able to see the other. Like the spider may cause kind of horrible fears to certain people, but in Indian culture, I mean American Indian tribes, there is the grandmother spider, who is an amazing goddess. She's the creator of the cosmos, of Earth and everything. And I did some work, actually, by the way, with spider webs. I mean, an entire kind of installation. And I found spiders. Of course, some of them are very frightening, but there is also this complexity that they manage to weave. And I think it's very interesting, and it's also extremely feminine, because it's kind of kind of sort of it's sort of sorry, I mean, I lost my never mind. It's the threads, different threads that are being woven together. So I think that what we need, well, I would assume that what we need is a syncretic culture, a form of that's the shift that I hope is happening, where we can live side by side with different worldviews, different religions, different experiences and ways of knowing, and be able to embrace them and respect them and learn. The most important thing is learn from one another. And this is a non-hierarchical way of, which is like a spider, almost like a non-hierarchical way or web of being in the world. And I think that somehow, despite your differences, the way, if I take both of you together and I would weave it, I would find something very interesting.
Can we ask Susanna, because June
Yes, I finished.
Thank you very much. Beautiful.
Thank you. So I don't want to so thank you to both of the speakers and to everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Well.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
It was better. Try talk.
Can you hear me okay?
Now we can hear you. Weird.
Off and just see, is that any better?
Yeah, that's better.
Fortunately, so I'll speak for a moment, but just give me a thumbs down if you can't hear me. Okay, thanks, Annalisa. So yeah, thank you both for your work. Really interesting chat. I do think it does show the complexity of spirituality. Annalisa, I think I really liked your idea of the lowest common denominator, the point at which we meet, perhaps, that we can all meet. And then from there, everybody can have their own beliefs and traditions, celebrations, ceremonies, etc. But the point at which we might all meet, I think that's interesting, particularly as a psychologist. I'm coming from the point of view in my own work, in my own book, etc., talking about the importance of it in mental health and the mental health crisis. And so to me, it's really important to find not necessarily common beliefs at all, but a common and not necessarily common value system, because we will have different cultural value systems as well. So even, so that's important as well. But I think to find a place at which it's just all of these conversations will increase our vocabulary. And so people can say, actually, I know now what metaphysics is. I don't believe in that. But I do like ceremony or celebration, or I do or don't believe in oneness. We all spiritual people tend to assume everybody believes in oneness. Not everybody does. So those kind of things are really interesting. Also, Melanie, you mentioned just in terms of, individuality versus self-actualization, and is it a bad bedfellow to, I don't want to misquote you, but collectivism or oneness. I know that wasn't the word you used, so my apologies. But interestingly, one model, which is only a model, Abraham Maslow's model of his hierarchy of needs, and seeing as we're using his term, self-actualization, at the beginning of his work, that was indeed at the top of the pyramid. But actually in his later work, which he didn't publish because he didn't have enough work to support it, he actually he didn't put it in a pyramid, but it was as if he was opening up that pyramid. And he went on to self-transcendence. So an important point that actually he felt that beyond self-actualization and looking inwards was the other, looking outwards, be that to society, others, family, a Godhead, etc.
Susanna, the other word was inclusivity, and perhaps would you like June to? I mean, I think I understand what she means, but it was a fascinating phrase, and I did write it down. Would you like June to explain the kind of the tension between those two models, if you like, or
Well, I
notion?
don't want to take too much airtime myself. I'm I'm not one of the speakers, so I don't want to. But I understood what she was saying. I hope I'm not misunderstanding. So June, I beg your pardon. But I think I do understand that kind of possible kind of, are we looking at ourselves and trying to develop ourselves on our own path, and evolve ourselves, or are we actually looking outwards towards each other?
Yes,
But
I mean, it's what people like Jonathan Sachs, the chief rabbi, in his wonderful book, in that area, was saying that the risk of the spiritual is that everybody has their own spirituality, but you lose a sense of community in it. And he actually, because some of the liberals who are in that black have a background in, well, one of the great faiths, he begs them not to leave because there is a community. So if you're all self-actualizing, and when you're going down the spiritual but not religious, and you're all going to create what both of you have, Annalisa and Degard, have done, you're going to create your own belief system, then the risk is that there is no commonality, and that you won't get, and he quotes, for example, the abolition of slavery, that actually it required a whole lot of people to work together to do that, and so on. So, and I think that's the risk. And I know you're right about Maslow, because at the end he did look at transcendence and so on. But I think there's the biggest risk in the spiritual but not religious, or everybody creating their own system, is that you lose a sort of block of people, which is what justice in a sense requires in some way. I really do have to go, but it's a fascinating discussion, and lovely to meet you, Susanna, too. But I think that that's the tension that I feel, and so on. But
and I agree with June. I think I haven't thought about it enough in the haste of doing it for today, but the arts can address that.
Yes, they can. And of course, you see, I'm a musician, and we require large numbers of people to get together and to entrain in some way in order to do anything. So we have to create a community out of a diverse group of people, whether that's a sort of operatic soprano on the one hand, a tuba in another, and a sort of triangle player in another. And so even though we have this huge diversity, we have somehow or other to bring it together. And that, as an orchestral conductor, that is immensely difficult. It requires immense amount of skill to do that. But I think, and I think don't want to say we're all different, but we have to keep we're all at one. And I find this in some of the spirituality stuff. We're all one has to be kept in some tension with we're not all one. Our cultures are different, and one only has to look at the current Middle East to know that they will fight one another for whatever reason, and have done over the centuries. So I think it's very complex. And I mean, thank you, Annalisa and Leela, for for setting out some of those tensions. And I'm sorry to have to leave, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, June.
Well, it is 7:35, so
Thank you.
this should be the end of the meeting. Do you want to have another 10 minutes, perhaps, or are you happy to finish here?
I'm fine with that if people have more kind of interest to discuss with us. I can see a hand waving.
Yes.
Judith again. Oh, it's gone away. Anybody else who perhaps hasn't spoken? Oh, Susanna, you want to reappear?
Make it really quick. Just actually, it was interesting, just from what June was saying there. I do think she just reminded me of Viktor Frankl's call for, in order to counterbalance the Statue of Liberty, there should be a statue of responsibility on the West Coast of America. And so this idea of that risk of really individual spirituality, but Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I hope people heard that. I beg your pardon. Thank you. So just, that call for not only a statue of liberty, but also a counterbalancing statue of responsibility came from Viktor Frankl. That over individualization of spirituality, does it take away the duty and responsibility that traditional religion put on us continuously or used to? That's just a thought.
I think the thing is that is exactly what Annalisa was saying in the beginning, though, that if you, and that's really the kind of beauty of looking at all those stats and going, well, actually, there's a decline anyway, and there's a void, and this void somehow, and I think you express that with your, in your own practice, that your that void is will be filled with something, and potentially, this notion of drawing in different types of spirituality, whether they are completely individual or not. I think there are strands to it. Well, whatever. Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that it's the void, the void of organized religion is there.
Sorry, I wanted to say hi to Ian because we had an exchange on Facebook.
Yeah, that was weird.
Very confused, and I was very confused.
Yeah, sorry, I was a bit late in. So
Not at all.
thank you very much, both of you, for the talk. It's been fascinating. I'm quite new to this, so it's quite an unusual experience. So I mainly get involved in taking people on pilgrim walks. And what I've found over the years is, if you take anyone out on these sorts of long distance walks, Camino style, after about 3 days, you find that people, it really struck me about the left and right brain, but after about 3 days, people calm down a bit. They're worrying about everything in their lives for the first 3 days, and then after about 3 days, they start to just chill out, and a different part of the brain, which is much more connected to the senses, kicks in. And it's at that point that people really start to see their surroundings and experience their surroundings. And that might be a purely physical and sort of psychological thing. But what I found is that being in a really amazing natural environment leads to a sort of awe in the original phrase, original meaning of it, rather than, oh, that's awesome. Really is awesome. And that then leads to people. I've taken quite a lot of artists out with me over the years, and they are very good at expressing that. Whereas everyone can experience it, but the artists in particular are very good at expressing it through maybe music or dance or painting or poetry. But everyone feels it. It's just they have the ability to somehow channel that feeling. And that's where I'm particularly interested in the arts and spirituality. So it's largely through looking at different types of practices. So it might be walking, it might be meditation, it might be just being out in a natural environment and hearing the birds. So it's that sort of stuff. So I'm very much a newbie to this. So thank you for allowing me to join the group and listen in. I'll shut up now.
No, I think you're bang, like you're exactly the kind of person that we want to speak with and join us, because I think, to be honest, I think we're 99% agree on everything. So the only really difference is whether I believe in power beyond the humans or not. I mean, and to me, it's not something that preclude working with this group of people. And I know I'm not in a minority, but it doesn't my stance, as somebody meant, I think Susanna used that word, is about helping secular people or disaffected people that live organized religions and have nowhere to go. And I feel that my formula can fill a lot of that void just by doing the practices, just by focusing on spiritual practices, and arts as a subset of them can help a lot of people reaching that kind of spiritual mind that you mentioned, and then change their behaviors. So that's kind of my hope, I guess.
Yeah, the arrival at awe. I do think, Ian, when you're saying that people go from being kind of all het up about their lives and it takes about 3 days, I certainly experience that when I get out of my life. And I personally think that it's again, it's about a kind of body pressure that you that during it's in my life. I think my adrenaline is kind of high, and as the adrenaline drops, your awareness can concentrate. I don't need to go on, you know, I don't need days and days of it to just snap into that place of awe. But in order to really drop, yes, of course. But I think it's like that adrenaline kind of draining out, which is just, it's and it's challenging because you have so many feelings appearing during that process. So to be walking that time is quite helpful. That must be fascinating.
There's a very interesting sort of Jesuit practice, which is to map out your feelings when you're out on a walk in the countryside and so on. And because those feelings are really important to understanding where you're coming from in life and what your values are, and trying to sort of almost like journal those feelings, and because they do matter actually in terms of understanding where you are in life. So it's quite there are some little gems of spiritual practices that you can pick up from a lot of the faith traditions, whichever one it is. It doesn't really matter, but they've sort of been through this for hundreds, thousands of years, and they've learned a bit on the route. I think it's the way in which those things can be applied in what is essentially a secular world to sort of see how we can learn from those practices. Actually, be it meditation. Or silence, simply silence is an amazing thing. Just stopping talking for a while is he says, talking away is quite useful.
Brilliant.
Should we stop here?
Any final comments?
Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful. Thank you. It was really interesting. And I think that, well, I mean, it's something that there are some themes that we can definitely continue discussing. We need to think about it, because I was very interested. I mean, I think it deserves more time, more discussion. The many themes. I mean, I was just mentioned that I was really interested in what you said, God, about your visionary state where there is no shadow, there is no negativity. And it was a very interesting point. I mean, it's just an interesting idea, and it would be something that I would want to discuss, for example, with relation to the arts and also with relation to psychology. So it's just something that I think is really, there is more to it, than just, so this is just one, but there's a lot more.
We can, between us, try and kind of perhaps each send an email to Annalisa with 2 or 3 keywords that actually kind of have caught our attention over this discussion.
That's a good, yeah.
Because also from a scheduling point of view, we don't have any from here on, because all the speakers that were supposed to come in, they delayed their talk. So
we have I don't know, but we don't have dates, but we have
yeah, so we can definitely have more discussions, but I would prefer to have one or two topics and really delve into them.
Yeah,
Yeah?
I agree. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That shadow side, I think, is really interesting,
The
because
shadow and the visionary, and yeah,
some people talk about, like, I mean, there's so much of it, isn't there? Like invasion of spirit, you know, of negative energies, of chakras. And I find the other thing that we haven't even mentioned, which is when I did these survey before I started to kind of show people my art, and some of you might have been victim, probably Leela, you might have been.
I'm a victim. Oh, for what? Yes, I mean, I'm a victim. I'm joking.
NDA,
Sorry?
I used to get people to sign a non-disclosure agreement before I would, and also ask them to fill in a survey before I would show my art to them, because I was
no, I totally understand that. I mean, I this is another topic we can discuss.
Another topic, but what I found was, in the survey that I asked people to fill in, the idea really was, are they a goodie or are they a baddie? I.e., are they somebody who is going to be sympathetic to my work and be nice to me? And then, or are they going to be horrible and go, oh, it's all just rubbish, everything, the ideas. And now I've reached a point where I just don't care anyway, so they can think what they like. So I don't do anything.
Of course.
Of it. But in the survey, I asked people, do you believe in karma? And absolutely everybody, whether they were God believers, spiritual believers, non-believers, atheists, believe in, you know, just bricklaying and that's the end of life, said they believed in karma, which really surprised me, because if you believe in karma, that's really complicated in my mind. Like, this huge moralistic system, kind of like this massive invisible karmic moral forces that go through, that reincarnate as well, that you somehow, oh, anyway, mind-blowingly complex. And yeah, and so it's that karmic negativity as well, the shadow, that point of view.
Sorry, I'm gonna
just remember this. I just have this image in my mind. There is this beautiful, very powerful painting by Kandinsky. I'm sure you know that. You know of the war between between, I don't know. It's a war, and there is these energies colliding. So yeah, because it was very terrified.
Can we close so that I can
Sorry,
stop recording?
Perhaps three keywords from everybody on what.
Yeah, fantastic. And I agree that we should concentrate on, do a particular theme and concentrate on concept and concentrate on it. So we have a really good focus. And yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for.
Thank you. It was wonderful, mind blowing. Yeah.
Annalisa.
Thank you, everybody.
So appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks very much.